Okay, this is an interview with Jeffrey Robinson on November 9th, 2019 for the Queer Oral History Archive. We are in the Our Savior Lutheran Church in Fresno, California. So, thank you for meeting with me, Jeff. First, I just wanted to ask, what does pride mean to you?
Wow, what does pride mean to me? Well, pride means to me that you're able to celebrate your whole person without trying to cover or hide things. That you can be who you are. At least on that one day. I also think it's a day where people are able to recharge their batteries. We live in a pretty conservative area of California. It's often referred to as the Bible Belt of California, and there are some really repressive and oppressive type of politicians and organizations and policies that live here in the Central San Joaquin Valley, and it's a day in which LGBTQ people can recharge their batteries. It's the one day of the year for us that we're able to let our hair down, to be who we are, to enjoy a day out in the sunlight, in broad daylight for everyone to see. And it really helps us to be able to not only celebrate that we survived another year in an oppressive area of California, but also to celebrate the achievements and the accomplishments that we as a community have been able to create through that year.
Awesome, thank you. So, have you lived in Fresno all of your life?
No, I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And when I was probably about 4 years of age, we moved from a small town in Oklahoma, Bartlesville, to San Francisco. It was kind of a culture shock for my family. Unfortunately, I didn't get to experience much of it. I was only 4. We ended up then relocating to Corte Madera, which is across the Bay Area, across the Golden State Bridge. And then we relocated to Clovis, probably about the time I was about ready to start kindergarten. So I did kindergarten, first grade, and half of second grade here. Then we picked up and moved, and I did half of second and half of third grade in Porterville. Then we picked up and we moved to Sacramento. And then we moved to Rancho Cordova up there in the area. It was a suburb. And I did half of third grade there. And then we ended up moving back to Fresno. And so from 4th grade to today, I've been here.
Wow, that's a lot of moving.
Yeah, there was a lot of jumping around and relocations and stuff.
When did you first become involved with organizing and activism for the LGBT community?
Well, I guess I should say that I have always known since I was probably about 10 years old that I was different. I wouldn't have been able to say I was gay. I wouldn't even been able to say, oh, I like boys. I just knew there was something different about me. And it was something that shouldn't be shared. Kind of an instinctive ability to protect myself. So I would say when I hit about junior high, I kind of started figuring out that, hey, all these names that people have been calling me for years, they all are associated with being gay, homosexual, faggot, queer, sissy, pussy, all those type of things that people would lob at me. It wasn't that I was just a heavyset kid or that I wasn't any good at sports. Really then, kind of said, oh, I am attracted to other guys. And that's what all this means. And so it was a very difficult transition, putting words together that were really being flung at me that didn't make sense at the time, because I didn't know necessarily what those words meant. Yeah. But once I was able to put terminology or definitions to these ugly words, and they really did register with me, it was very hard. So that was when I was in junior high. When I hit my 10th grade year, right before I turned 16, I started reaching out and looking for an LGBT community to be a part of. And one of the things that I found were the erotic bookstores that were in town, the tea rooms or the park settings, And then I also started sneaking into the bars at 16. And the first night I went, there was a news magazine type of format, a publication called the Fresno Front Runner. And it really was, boom, eye-opening for me. I took it home, I hid it, I read everything in it, and it really kind of changed things. And one of the things that was in that was a book review column. And they had reviewed a book that was available at a place called Upstart Crow, which was at Manchester Mall. And it was like a little brunch coffee house, kind of upscale coffee house and bookstore combined. And they had a little gay section.
That
So I
is
went
so
to go.
cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. I went to find this book called The Word Is Out, which was the book had been reviewed in the Fresno Front Runner. And while I was there, I found a whole little section of LGBT themed novels. Novels by Gordon Merriweth, which was at that time they were kind of like Harlequin romance novels written for the gay community. But the person always ended up dying alone. It was unrequited love. I fell in love with my best friend who could never love me back because I was gay and he was straight. It was sad sack type of novels, but there was some other good stuff there. But anyway, I remember going there and finding the place and getting the book on The Word Is Out, and it's just the most amazing book. I think finding the Front Runner changed my life in many ways, which was the newspaper at the Circle, which was the bar we snuck into. It wasn't the first gay bar I'd been to, but it was one of the bars I had snuck into. And the Word Is Out was this compilation of individuals' synopsis of the stories of their life. So you open it up and there would be a picture of the person, and then there would be about a page and a half of their narrative biography. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here reading stuff that were about lesbians and gay men of color and bisexual people and transgendered people, people that were differently challenged, older people, younger people, all within our community, which had no idea there was such thing. Because there was no media presence for our community in the 80s. I basically graduated high school in 1980, so 76, 77, 78, and 79, there wasn't a lot going on. So I know that I went to the very first gay movie that had come out in my generational time. It was called Cruising with Al Pacino. It was a murder mystery, but it was about gay men being murdered by a predator within the gay community that was all into S&M and torturing people.
Oh, wow.
So the gay community was actually boycotting and picketing these movies, but it's like the only thing there was, and so I went. So I can remember all that, but finding The Word Is Out, reading The Word Is Out, opened my mind to a more bigger community. Finding the Fresno Front Runner, the newspaper, opened my mind that there's more than just dirty bookstores and parks. There was a whole bunch of stuff in that newspaper. The book thing was the first thing that really caught my eye. But also that night at the bar was really an amazing adventure for me in that they were doing something that I had no clue that ever even existed. They were having a drag show.
Oh,
and it was the Imperial Dove Court's campaign show for the 8th reign. Now they're up to 46 of us now.
wow.
So the 8th reign. And so I got to watch Tiffany Taylor Tate, who was Empress 7, and Will Rochelle, who was Emperor 7, perform, and Doug Bennett, and Jerry Dayton, and Cindy Williams, and Eldanya, and a whole bunch of other people that were the court people coming and performing that have went on to become bigger. They became leaders, so they were kind of like I looked up to them. So that was my first thing. I got to dance with lesbians, and it was my first night out really doing anything and really walking away feeling positive and said I found a community. I'm not alone anymore. I never connected with kids my age. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that I was brought up with adults since I was probably 10 years old. So when we moved back to Fresno, when I was hitting the 4th grade and I was turning 10, I worked every day in a grocery store with my stepfather and my mom. And so there were no kids my age. My interaction with kids my age was totally in junior high and high school. That was it. There was no sleepovers or camp outs or coming over and playing or anything like that. I lived with adults all the time. So finding the queer bar, finding the circle was like this monumental, eye-opening, life-saving, life-changing event for me. And the fact that I looked like I was 12 years old and they were letting me into the bar. So after I went, I said, I got to figure out how I'm going to keep doing this. How am I going to keep getting into the bar? I'm only 16, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go down to the DMV, and I'm going to tell the DMV that I've lost my driver's license, and I need another one, and I'm just going to put down that I'm 21. And I did. And they gave me a little pink piece of paper that said, you know, that this was a temporary ID, that I was 21, yada, 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 and all this stuff on it, right? I'm like, okay. So I had no picture on it, but that's what I used to get into all the bars. And it worked, and I ended up befriending the security guard at the circle. Her name was Gwen. She was a heterosexual grandma who was a security guard there. So I ended up befriending her and the other people there, and that became kind of my bar because I could get in. The very first bar I ever went to, I went to an after hours at a place called the Showbiz. Was on Blackstone, across from the porno bookstores, and I was 16, and it was very eerie and odd for me. I wasn't ready for everything. I had a straight friend who was a girl. We would call her, and not in a derogatory way. She was a fag hag, but meaning with all the sincerity and love you can say with that word. She took me there one evening when my parents were out of town. And so it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, we go in, and the bar reeked of this funky, weird smell that was making me very lightheaded. And what it was is that everybody was sniffing poppers.
Oh.
And I was, poppers give you that rush, and so that it was just everywhere from the dance floor. And I was like kind of woozy and coming in and out of it, and it just wasn't a comfortable feeling. It was like I really wanted to kind of be there, but it was really apprehensive because it's like, I am not used to this scene. And so I remember the song that was playing, it was a Donna Summer song, Sunset People was playing. People were all high on poppers, and they had tamarines shaking, and it was really cool. I'm like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this. Well, then someone reached around and grabbed my ass from what I thought was part of the wall, but it was another room that was pitch black. That's where the bar was. We were it was like a weird setup, and I said, okay, I'm done, I need to go.
Yeah.
So I got the hell out of Dodge really quick. But then, it gave me the courage to go find the circle and do all these different things, and I equate that to really saving my life. I don't think I was ever suicidal, but I know many people my age within the community have been suicidal, felt so alienated and lost. I really feel that newspaper, The Front Runner, and finding that book, The Word Is Out, and connecting with the Imperial Dove Courts people, and finding a place where everybody got along and liked each other was really the thing that kind of pushed me forward and got me involved and made me want to do more. So you asked how did I first get involved with stuff, is that the court was really my first entry. So even though that was my first experience with the court, my first real interaction with the court wasn't until their 11th reign. So that was 7. Now we're into 11. And I started going to some court meetings. I was doing more activities and stuff with them during their 12th reign. And then their 13th reign, 2 of the lesbians that I was really close to owned a place called Cindy's Wash and Dries, and they had 2 of them. They were both named Cindy. And I got connected with them by doing my laundry there and getting pulled in and going to stuff and really getting to meet people, not just looking at people up on the stage, but actually getting to meet them, being encouraged to get involved, to help do a set or come to this, come to that. And so I started getting involved with them that way. And at about that time, the Fresno Frontrunner started to implode in on itself. It was becoming very erratic when it would come out, if it would come out. There would be months on end that there was no newspaper. It was getting thinner, and by then I had been exposed to the Bay Area Reporter and started working with folks saying, hey, we need a paper like the Bay Area Reporter here. We need news. And
Yeah.
That's one of my original forelays was through the court to the newspaper. And so I worked with my friend Cindy Williams, and she worked on me about wanting to do this and what I needed to do. And I say that Cindy has always been my mentor. And so one of the things that she really hammered through to me is that if you make a commitment, you need to follow through. Your word is your bond. You're only as good as what you produce. And so I was still young. I was probably 22 at that point, and I was involved in trying to go to school to create a pathway for my career. And there were a lot of stuff, and one of the things that was being talked about, that Cindy really talked with me about as we did all this kind of footwork, was that you're going to have to give up school to do this newspaper. And it's like, well, really got kind of torn. It's like, well, I'm not going to give up school. So I guess I'm just not going to pick up this thing because I'm 22. I don't really know anybody. Nobody's really going to trust me at 22 to invest money in me or give me this, that, and the other. I finally just said, I'm just going to stick with this. And then what ended up happening is Cindy then took the stuff that we had worked on and she moved forward with it. And I worked side by side with her. And I became actually, one of the first things I did is I became a book reviewer for the newspaper. My column was called Off the Shelf. And I would review books. And then, of course, it turned into many other things. And I became the distributor, and I wrote for this, and I wrote for that. But that's kind of what got me in there. Plus, I'm working along with the Imperial Dove Court. So Pride came around in 1991, and by that time, I'm probably between 26 and 29. We started Community Link when I was 25. And the parade kind of came about 2.5 years later. So in 1988, we started Community Link as a gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender community service organization that ran a community center one of the first things we did was a youth group. We had a thing called the 40 plus potluck, which was for older folks. We had a Saturday night social, which was a clean and sober social event every Saturday night. We had the big 5,000 square foot warehouse. They played pool, they played ping pong, they came and talked, they danced, they chatted, they did all that stuff. We did so much stuff in that building, just a variety of stuff. We had an erotica night for men, an erotica night for women. We had a community art show where we turned the 5,000 square foot warehouse into an art exhibit by our community members. Life-size statues, paintings, anything that you can imagine. We even commissioned a mural on one of our walls.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, it was just so amazing. We did coffee houses with live entertainment, did all that kind of stuff, and then in about 1991, at that point we had 3 buildings. We had the main Community Link building, which was in this 5,000 square foot warehouse, which used to be the old Fresno Tobacco and Candy Company. So the trucks would drive up into this warehouse we had. It was just an open warehouse. Brick walls, concrete flooring, big, massive wooden beams up in the ceilings. And then there were 144 hothouse glass windows up top that would vent heat and coolness and all that. It was just a cool, amazing industrial building.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
So at that point, we decided, well, we need a little bit more. So we took on a place called Community Link 2, which was literally just a half a block down from us. And it was a 300-foot office building. And we were able to do all of our professional services there. We had a hate crime line that was going on there. We also had an employment service. We actually had a former employment service agent that used to work out in the real world of that. When he retired, he came and we started finding people from our queer community jobs out in the community. And we had a men's group and a women's group and the youth group and the senior group, and we used to do brunches every other Saturday. We did all kinds of things. And one of the things that came about towards that, and we ended up picking up a third space because we started doing large workshops where we needed an area we could put about 30 to 40 people in. And next door to us, 2 doors down in the same little building we were in, there was a spot that had opened up that was that size. It was like a quarter of their building at the back. And we ended up picking that up and started doing all kinds of things. We did codependent workshops, we did self-defense workshops, we did dressing for success workshops, we did all kinds of cool stuff. In the course of doing that, I started finding my activism. And I was finding that not just providing services and still trying to go to school and still trying to have a job, I also found that I was radicalized. I guess I'm not saying that correctly, but and I was working with my closest friends who were also kind of radicals in the community, and we were energized towards creating change with how people with HIV and AIDS were being treated and no services being given and funding being cut. And we were doing all this civil disobedience in Fresno, in Sacramento. We were going over to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, to DC. We were going up and protesting in San Francisco, in LA. And our sister organization came along, and it was Queer Nation, which was way more my interest level, and because it was totally focused within the gay community, the LGBT community. And one of the things we used to always talk about with Queer Nation is that it is inclusive and exclusive all at the same time. So it was a very dichotomy of the fact that it included all of our members of the LGBT community, but excluded all the stuff that wasn't part of our community. So it was a really unique thing, and it was that movement was extremely built on visual representations, graphic art, street theater, and all that kind of stuff. And so we had kiss-ins, and we did all kinds of stuff. We used to do these day glow colored stickers. It would be like lesbian dollars and queer rights, and I'm here and I'm queer and get used to it, and all these really political sayings. And we would go and we would plaster homophobic businesses with these stickers all over their windows because they were a pain in the ass to get off. They were designed to where when you tried to wash them off, the paper would come off, but the sticky part wouldn't.
Awesome.
So we were doing all this radical kind of stuff, and that group started talking about having an actual out and about visible gay pride parade in Fresno. There were about 12 of us. And we started talking about it and decided that we wanted to move on. This was in 1991. In 1990, a few months before this, Fresno State had their first LGBTQ film festival called Fig Leaf International Film. It was Fig Leaf. Fresno International Lesbian and Gay Film Educational and Arts Films Festival.
Nice. And
so we took that and we kind of built upon that within 6 months. And so we started saying we're going to do this. So the group of 12, the radical queers, the more folks that were more out, the ones that weren't worried about their reputation or what people thought, or wanted everyone to think that we're just like everyone else. You know, we all want the white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a dog. Mm-hmm. Not all of us choose to emulate that. So we went out and we started working on this and we started putting together. And the first thing we did is we started talking about it openly within the LGBT community. And we, unbeknownst, no one had thought that we were going to get pushback from folks. We got a tremendous amount of pushback from our own community. We were rocking the apple cart. Fresno's not ready for this. You're going to make things wholly worse for us. You're going to make the situation incredibly hostile towards us. You're going to be bringing violence onto our community. All kinds of stuff, and it was really shocking because these were the mainstream leaders of our community that were 100% against us doing this parade. And those individuals started going and soliciting the Fresno City Council to deny us the ability to have a parade. Oh. They started soliciting the business owners in the Tower District to come together in a force of opposition to it. So we were having to deal with not only dealing with a city that, gay people? There ain't no gay people in Fresno. And the shop owners who thought, oh, well, if you have a gay pride parade, people aren't going to come to my restaurant anymore because they're going to be afraid of you people. And then we had the gay people that were out there, gay, lesbian people that were saying, Uncle, you cannot do this, do not allow them to do it, really working hard against us, working hard within the community and outside of the community. So we had a lot of work to do. So the first thing we did is we formed committees. And at that time, we tried to have a male and a female co-chair for every one of our committees. And my female co-chair for the committee, we were the Public Relations Committee, was Liz Maines and myself. And it was our job to go out and start convincing the other LGBT organizations to get on board with us, to participate, and if nothing else, stop creating barriers. So we started going to every meeting in town and working with people and talking about the vision we were having and what we were doing and going from there. The committee also had folks that were working on the parade only, the festival site only, the parade book only, the decorations for the area. Different people had different committees. And there were about 12 of us. And the group really consisted of Community Link members, ACT UP, Queer Nation, and the Imperial Dove Court.
Nice.
Those were the four main, if you said the 12, we all kind of belonged to those groups. So in lots of ways, in the earlier part of the 90s, the late 80s and 90s, all of us were intermarried on everybody else's group. So I was involved with ACT UP, Queer Nation, Community Link, and IDC. IDC was involved with Community Link. Queer Nation and ACT UP were involved with each other. Some of those folks were involved in Queer Nation, ACT UP, and Community Link. So all 12 of the disciples, we all kind of interpopulated these other groups. So we really needed to reach out and grasp on and get this, but it was the radical queer community and those people that are the most identified as, if you walk down the street and say, oh, there goes a gay person, oh, there goes a lesbian person, you could identify us. None of us were closeted in any way, and we really put this organization together, and we had our first Pride Parade. It was very difficult. Mayor Karen Humphrey was the mayor at that time. She's I think she's only the second female mayor. She was the first female mayor. We've only had two. And it wasn't a strong form of mayorship at that point. She was a city council person that had been elevated into the mayor's position, but she had a seat on the city council and she voted that way. So we met with her about getting proclamations, getting this and that. The city tried to throw every obstacle in our way. The first part was we did not have a great deal of funding at that time. We were struggling. And they were trying to keep us from having it because we couldn't insure the event. And so we had to fight with them and say, it's our constitutional right to assembly and freedom of speech, and you cannot deny this to us, and this is what we're going to do. Work with us or don't, we're still going to do this. Then they required us to have put barriers out. We finally fought them on, we can't afford to pay to have a company like Alert Light or one of the others put the barriers out. And the city wasn't willing to do this for us, but what they would do for us is we could go to their storage yard, load up the semi-trucks with these barricades, and we could pick them up the day of the parade, put them out the day of the parade, load them back up at the end of the parade, and take them back and unload them at the stockyard. So half of our team was tied up in doing this work with the trucks, of just getting the barricades out for a half-mile section. So Olive and Palm to Wishon Avenue was where the parade was. So it's a half-a-mile little section. We had to go do all that work to do it. One of the other crazier things we did, we had a decorations committee. And there was a little gay shop on Olive, the Tower Cottage. And they got us these windsocks that are really gorgeous and pretty in a house. We weren't thinking very straight. But they were super thin little, each color was a thread. And it was like a silken thread when they moved, It'd be great in a small stuff where you can see it. We went and rented a cherry picker where you had to move it with a truck, stop it, unload and crank down these 4 massive leg things, and then get in the thing and ride up, and we'd go all the way up to the street lights. And then we were hanging these little rainbow colored windsocks off of them. And I know we had gotten all the way down Olive. We're at the corner of Van Ness and Olive, and a policewoman stops and says, "What y'all doing?" And she's looking, and I said, "No." She goes, "Oh, do you think it's worth it?" And we look down there, and you can't see them. You can see the one we have, but they were so far up because it was on the main street lights that come out over the street, not the little decorative ones that the tower is known for. And it's like, well, you know what? We did our best. So it took us all evening to do this. We did it in an evening with no anything. Here we are, a bunch of queers moving this heavy-duty industrial equipment, and then we had to bring them all down that next week. Oh, it's like, oh, they'll just rot. Let them rot. But we learned that wasn't going to work. Yeah. So we did a lot of things, trial and error. So we started working on this. We weren't getting a lot of necessarily support from our LGBT partners or our community or other organizations. And so one of the things we did is we went up and we talked to the Dykes on Bikes. We really thought that it was very important to have the women kick off the parade in Fresno. So we worked with the Dykes on Bikes in San Francisco at that time. Their official name on paper was the Women's Motorcycle Contingent. It was before they won their lawsuit and got the actual name Dykes approved. So we got them, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, nice. San Francisco Queer Nation, and San Francisco ACT UP to come and help us with this. Awesome. So Pride was this huge amount of work, and even within the queer radical circle, the 12 of us, we all had very different ideals about stuff. Even though we're radical queers and our politics are extremely progressive to the left, you would not imagine how 12 people could not necessarily see eye to eye on stuff. So we had humongous debates and arguments within our group over how we were going to be able to charge for the festival. So there was a contingent that said we should not charge, it should all be free, blah, 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 this is the way it is. And it's like, well, then we're not going to be able to continue this. No one's helping us raise money. We're not being allowed into the bars to raise money. We've got to find a way of making this happen. We're not talking about charging $25, $50, $60. We're talking about $5. So when we finally got around to voting, we agreed that we would have a charged festival. Therefore, we needed fencing. Then came the next big battle. The only fencing companies in the area, all of their fencing came with barbed wire on the top.
Oh, yikes.
And it had a very definite feel of Nazi Germany, Auschwitz type of connotation. And we were like, oh my God, you know. So we had to work through that, and we had to bring on the other queer radicals that were part of us. The 12 of us, we all needed to come together and come to a consensus and kind of agree that this is what we're going to do. This is not the best stuff, but this is what we're kind of forced and limited into doing. So we had that. Then we had battles over how out in the open could this event be? Would we allow the media into the event? How we were going to protect our vast amount of our community who was not at a comfort level or had the ability to be out to the world, to their coworkers, to their families, whoever might see them on TV. We had to find out how we were going to deal with protecting where they were at in their coming out process and being political, believing that our visibility was what was going to save our lives. How are we going to be visible yet but still protect and respect our other folks that weren't where we were at? There were a small few of us that were extremely out. So working on those type of things, and one of them was the agreement was if you pay your $5 to get into the festival, we should not let the media into the festival site. That people should be able to let their hair down in the festival without worrying about being spotted on TV and having to jump in a bush. But if you were there to watch the parade and you were marching in the parade, then there was an expectation that you were going to be seen. And that's just what comes with that. So trying to do that, and then trying to work with the electronic media, the TV stations, the Fresno Bee and all that, with respecting that. Liz and I were the spokespersons who did all of the interviews for any of the media, and trying to keep them, and the media was not necessarily as savvy as we think they are today. They were actually going up to the chain link fence and putting their lenses between the little openings and trying to film people inside, which caused people to be upset and stuff. So many things that we had to learn, and many things that we had to do to find compromises that would keep the integrity of what we were trying to do, and also make sure that the event wasn't going to be one of those things like one and done. Okay, you had it, it didn't work, people got outed, this is what happened, you wrecked lives, no one really came to the event, it was a big fiat. We needed to find a way to make sure that it was all going to run harmoniously and with the best effect, because our goal was an ongoing event. It wasn't just going to be this one thing and whatever. So we all have those type of philosophical debates. Is it 100% out? Is it whatever you're out as? Is it closeted? Is it not closeted? Are we going to charge? Are we not going to charge? Why is everybody fenced in? Da-da-da-da-da, this, that, and the other. Lots of little different game changers on that, and how and what we were going to do. One of the other parts was, which I love the fact that we did this. In 1991, we decided that we were going to have grand marshals. And we said, well, who are our grand marshals going to be? And it was like, well, you know what? We need to make sure that we're inclusive. So I'm going to say inclusive in 1991 is different than inclusive today. We said we need to make sure that a drag queen is represented because of Stonewall. We can't cut the drag queens out. And we need to make sure that a lesbian is seen and that a gay man. So we said that we were going to have a gay man, a lesbian, and a drag queen. And that was written into our bylaws, that we would have that kind of cross-representation. And so our first grand marshals were Jesse 1 and 4, and was Sari Dvorkin and Peter Robertson.
Oh.
So those were our representatives, and we kind of continued that. So Pride has done a lot of setting some examples. Male and female co-chairs, that used to be a big issue where men ran everything. White gay man ran everything. Lesbians were kind of off to the side. There were lesbian separatists that didn't want anything to do with men. That we were all going to work hand in hand together, and we were going to do this as a joint group. And that we did events and stuff that was geared towards the women's community. That we try to make ourselves as open and as available to everybody was very important. The other part of that was, and this is a huge part for me to today, is I always look at accessibility. And when I think of accessibility, I think more in terms that we have community that can afford whatever price tag we put on stuff, and other people that struggle even when it's just a $2 cover. And that we need to find ways in which we can be financially sound, but also make our event as accessible as possible, keeping our rates down on everything, doing fundraisers to keep those rates down, sponsorships to keep those rates down. And in the first few years, there was no such thing as sponsorship. That was a way after the first Prides got going. But to keep it to where everybody could go. And if someone walked up and said, hey, I only got 25 cents, go have a good time. Thank you. Hey, I don't have anything. Can I go in? Yeah, go in. We don't want to make you feel like you have to jump the fence where we're not looking. Go in and enjoy. This was done for all of us. And one of the things I've always been a strong believer in is that we as a community, the people in our community always kind of do the right thing. And what would happen if someone came and said, hey, I don't have any da-da-da, the person behind them inevitably would hear the conversation and say, you know what, don't worry about it. And we'd walk up and say, here's the donation for the person you just left in. Our community is always taking care of ourselves and taking care of others in our community. And those are really the touchstones for getting the Pride Parade up and off the ground. And I think it's the things that have made that event survive. I'm sorry, I haven't given you a chance to ask Gary any questions.
No, it's okay. That's great. I really, it's just really beautiful. I was wondering if you could talk to me about what goes into the planning of the Pride Parade
Over the
every
course of
year.
years, things have changed quite a bit, but the course of planning, right now, we used to really only plan for about 6 months out of the year. Now it's year round. We're already planning before that year's parade is even in the bank, which means before it's even in the can or it's even happened. We're already picking our theme for the next year. We're
Wow.
looking at fundraisers for the next year. We're looking at grand marshals for the next year. It starts that much earlier. So Pride has gone from being a 6 month planning gig to a year round event where we are doing fundraisers every month. We're doing all kinds of stuff. We've already picked our grand marshals for the 2020 parade, which is going to be our 30th year. We did that last Wednesday. We usually meet every other week, and then from about January to June, we meet weekly. So the first part is we need to come up with a theme. And then from the theme, we need to come up with a logo for the theme. So each year has its own graphic visual for that particular year. So we have Fresno Rainbow Pride as an organization, and we have a logo for our organization, which is a product, or it's actually a project of Community Link. Just like our youth group is a project of Community Link, our seniors is a project, the newspaper, the radio show, and all that are all projects under Community Link, which is the 501c3 or parent organization. So we have Fresno Rainbow Pride. So when we go out and we represent Fresno Rainbow Pride, we have business cards and stuff that have our Fresno Rainbow Pride logo. But each year for our t-shirts and our advertisements and stuff, we highlight the logo that represents that theme. So this coming year is 30 years of celebration. So we're putting that out there already. Last Wednesday, we chose our Grand Marshals. Our next step is to start notifying the Grand Marshals that they had been nominated and that they were selected, and to see if they will be a part of the event. That will be a new step in our processes. We are going to have a Grand Marshals Ball, where we invite all the past Grand Marshals to come. It's going to be in March this year of 2020.
Oh.
And we will announce to the community who these individuals are. They will be given their plaques at that point. It will be a big affair for them. It also will be a fundraiser for us, but it gives more importance and more weight to who a Grand Marshal is and why they were chosen. Why are they being honored? The community needs to know these folks have done these amazing things, and this is why they were chosen this year. So that's the process. We come up with the logo. We then start shooting some promotional video material for our websites, and also in case we think that we're going to be able to get into like a little 30-second ad into the Real Pride Film Festival. We start our fundraising process. We relook at our sponsorship packets. What do we need to do to beef them up or make any changes to that? And who are we going to solicit to be corporate sponsors? We then start working on any of the changes that have had to go into effect because of new regulations or laws for our application to participate in the parade. So the new ones that the city council have been hitting us the last year was everybody that's going to sell anything at your Pride Festival must have a Fresno City business license. So now we need to include that into our application so people will know. The other part of that is that between Fresno City, the Fresno City Council, and our insurance company, everybody must be insured. So now what we're trying to work on is what would it be for us to self-insure every booth that's going to be in the festival site. So if it costs us $40, we're going to say, okay, this is how much it is to have your festival booth. And then we're going to say, this is what it is for us to self-insure you, because we can't, we're going to have to self-insure every booth. So
Wow.
It's going to be the cost to get the booth plus that. So there's going to be an elevated cost, but then everybody's going to be covered because the city of Fresno has to be named as additional insured. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. That's something new. So we're working on recreating the applications. tightening up any time deadline time frames that we had that, ooh, we really pushed it by saying, oh, you could get us your ad by this date. Made it almost impossible for us to get a completed program to the printer and printed and given to us in time. So we may have to push some of those deadlines back. We've looked at all that. We usually have, after Pride, our first meeting after Pride Day, is a wrap-up of what happened. So let's talk about what was great, what was good, what could be improved, what do we want to do again, those type of things. So we start working on that. This year, for our event, we are already reaching out to the Dykes on Bikes in San Francisco and the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Okay. It's our 30-year anniversary. We really want them to know that if it had not been for their support, this event would not have probably happened in Fresno. So we're trying to bring them back as honored guests. We're trying to look at bringing in a marching band. The goal would be to bring either San Francisco or LA's marching band. We're trying to look at how much money that would cost us to do to bring them in, what type of things we need to do. So those negotiations and conversations started back in July for this coming June. We then start laying out. So one of the main discussions we had was, what are we going to do to pay it forward within our community? What things can we do to help our community? There are some stuff as Pride members, we could go and clean an alley or go serve food somewhere. So there's some altruistic type of let us help people and help our community. What can we do to be a part of this other than just raising money to put on this big, huge event? And let's make no qualms about it. Fresno Rainbow Pride is the largest LGBTQ gathering in the whole San Joaquin Valley. Not just Central California. We are the largest gathering between Sacramento and LA and San Francisco. So we'll get 5,000 people that will attend a 4-hour event. None of our other groups do that in anything that we do. So it is a big undertaking. So we do a year's worth of work for a 4-hour event. So there's many things we do. We're getting our fencing, our porta potties, our generators, our big evaporative coolers that we rent. We're getting all of our design stuff turned into banners. We're getting a billboard. We're going to be wrapping a bus this year. Wow. We've got all kinds of things that we're kind of working towards and working on. And one of the biggest ones is the monthly fundraising. We got to have that fundraising in place. And this is the thing for us. I talked earlier about accessibility. We do all of this work to underwrite to make sure that every individual has the ability to attend the festival. So $5 to get in is very inexpensive. I've done a thing where I looked at how much it costs to have a booth and to advertise and to have an entry in a parade and how much it costs to attend. I've looked at all the festivals and parades in the state of California that are LGBTQ, and we are by far the least expensive of anyone. And one of the things we talk to people when we go out for our sponsorships or what we call our Pride partners, which are people who donate money, we say your money is allowing us to make this event accessible so that anybody could attend if they wanted to. So money should not be a hardship for a community not being able to go. Because we're underwriting this with your sponsorship, your corporate sponsorship, or through your financial donation or the fundraising we do, we're able to make sure that everybody can go. And if someone came to us and said, we're a new group and we don't have the money, we don't have the 50 some odd dollars to do all this, we could waive the cost of the booth fee. We could say, don't worry about the table and chairs, we've got you. You'll still get 2 passes to get in. Or people said, we've got all these people and they can't afford to get in. Well, we can give you this amount for this. We're able to do that because of that hard work. And it's like, it does seem like all we're doing is out there raising money every other day. But it's so that we can do that so the community can have an accessible event. So that we can bring in LGBT culture that maybe isn't local to us. That we can afford to pay that to come in. So that we can make sure that we can keep our advertising costs extremely low for our souvenir booklet, our Pride program booklet. where we don't make, there is not, that booklet does not make a dime, it loses money. But we're able to print the story of the Grand Marshals. And we're able to print whatever. So a couple years ago when we were talking about raising the bar and how the bars were the first entities within our community where people could go, and we wanted to highlight that. We were able to do their stories and put their pictures and memorabilia in there and talk about why the bars were important. We wanted the thank you for the community, what went on, the thank you for all of the folks that worked on it, that they get acknowledgement. That program is so important for people to be able to slip in their back pocket and walk away with it and then look at it later in the evenings or look at it when they get done after Pride. So our fundraising efforts and our sponsorships and our Pride partner donations all go to keeping the event to be extremely accessible, extremely affordable, open to all. I'd like to go back and say, we talked about the Grand Marshals. And before it was a gay man, a lesbian woman, and a drag queen. In 2003, Community Link took over Pride completely, and we accelerated that open. We now have what we call a pioneering Grand Marshal, which is someone whose work was done back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And here we are in 2020, honoring those pioneers that made our life successful. So it's usually a much older person or entity. We usually have some type of a youth-oriented type Grand Marshal, a community Grand Marshal, Grand Marshals that are transgender, Grand Marshals that are allies, Grand Marshals that are affiliates. So last year, Carol Goldsmith, the president of Fresno City College, Fresno Unified School District, the whole school district was a Grand Marshal. We've done the Clovis GSAs were Grand Marshals one year. We go back and we try to honor all aspects of our community so that no one feels slighted or left out.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I'm sitting there thinking, do you have to transcribe all this yourself?
I do.
Holy hell.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'm honored to do it, and I'm really grateful that you're allowing me to interview you for this.
Well, I was really stoked when Kat told me that you wanted to interview me. I was like, oh, wow, really cool. I really like Jordan. This is going to be a good one. So
well, thank you.
You didn't know that you had a talkative person when you picked me.
Well, it's been cool to get to know you better. I've seen you at a lot of things, but I didn't get to know you very well, so that's been really cool. I did have a few more questions.
Oh yeah, please go.
All right. If you don't mind me asking, were police and corporations always present at Pride in Fresno? No.
The police have always had a presence there as we'll say peacekeepers. If you think of the Hunger Games and the peacekeepers, they had a role there. And I need to probably say this, is that the very first 3 years of the Pride Parade, the Ku Klux Klan came out in full force with hoods and the whole bit. Yeah. And they actually, what I've been told, I don't remember this myself, but I've been told very frequently, is that the city council gave them a permit to be where they were at. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but that's something that other committee members have told me. It's like, well, I never got that in focus 30 years ago, that they were given a permit to be in that area to confront us. So they've always been there. When we took over in 2003, there's an interesting history with Pride. So the original group of us, the original 12, by year 4, most of us had dropped out. So the first 3 years we were heavily involved. I was. The 4th year, my group all kind of dropped out. I was very much missing it. I went back the 5th year, decided it wasn't kind of the same. A few years later, they decided that the group wanted to not have a parade anymore. They felt that all it was Freaks on Parade. and they didn't like it. They thought it was giving us a bad name, so many of us got re-involved, but not from the inside of the organization, but from the outside, petitioning them not to do this. And what they did is they made the decision to move the parade from June, which is LGBT Pride Month, to October. And they decided to move it on to Fresno State's campus and call it Outfest, and there was no parade associated with it. So Cindy Williams, who was running the Q&A News, and I, who was running the Newslink newspaper, and other individuals got together and we did a community-wide survey through the newspapers and at the bars to vote on whether people wanted their pride in October or June. And overwhelmingly, the community came and said, no, we want our pride in June. We want a parade and all that. And so even though the original, or the group that actually held ownership of the parade at the time, moved over to Fresno State and called it Outfest, another group called Stonewall Pride came in and picked up to do the parade and to do the festival and all that in June. Unfortunately, the organization and the person that kind of got involved in it became a little problematic.
Oh.
I think they had it for 4 years or so, and in the end they had ran it into the ground.
Oh, no.
And a group of community leaders went to the city council for backing from the city council to take it away from the Stonewall Pride group, and they formed another group. And that group existed for 2 years. They did 2 pride parades. And on the 3rd year, which was coming into 2003, I had contacted them and said, hey, you guys haven't put anything out for the newspaper. What's going on? When can people get into the parade? It's about 3 months before Pride, so that would have been March. And I'm like, what's going on? And the thing is, oh, we're not doing it anymore. What do you mean you're not? Were you not going to tell the community you weren't doing this anymore? What's going on? Well, our bylaws said we could only serve 2 years. And we can't find anybody that wants to serve. So a group brokered the deal that the Pride Parade would come to Community Link. We picked it up in March of 2003 and really had to start the whole parade group. All the efforts and planning and everything had to start again. I'm sorry, I'm probably scaring you, huh?
No, that's okay. She's fine.
Had to all begin again brand new in March, and we had 3 months to put all that on. So it was a very Herculean type of task to do, but we were bound to turn. Our community was not going to not have a pride parade. So we put together a small group of people that would work on it, very limited funding. The parade had really shrunk down from the time that the Miller Project, or the Stonewall Pride had it, and then the other group, I don't even know that they had a name. It had become, there's a little parking lot directly across the street from the Tower Theater next to where the chicken pie shop is. A very tiny little parking lot. That's where the parade was the festival was happening.
Oh, wow.
So not much of an area at all. And the parade was, if you want to be in the parade, show up by 10 o'clock on Saturday at this time at this place. And there was no one to coordinate anyone. And so they didn't have grand marshals that I can see. They didn't have themes. They didn't have programs, that 2-year period. So we had to really kind of go in and start everything again from zero. And so we came back with, what did we learn the first 4 years, 5 years that we were doing this? Let's bring this back. We need a program. We need t-shirts. We need a logo. We need a theme. We need to grow this. We did 2 years on that little teeny parking lot and then moved it back to where it was originally at, which was that L-shaped intersection of Fulton Street and Alhambra. And we just regrew all that back. So putting all that effort back into it. The very first year we brought it back to that place, the police department came in and they stationed a lot of police down there. We were having, for the first time again in so many years, a beer area where we could serve beer. And they stationed themselves in the beer garden. So nobody came to get a beer because there probably was 15 or 20 officers and lieutenants and sergeants and captains and all this down there. It was really just overkill.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say that kind of went away. We also had that year where the police department were going to deny our permits because they insisted on knowing who every single person was that was going to come to the festival. That is not possible.
No.
And so we really fought, and at that time there was a Human Relations Commission that was functional in Fresno City, and we contacted them. This was happening about the week right before the event. They were telling us, you got to tell us, we're not going to issue this permit unless we know every name of people who will be inside the festival. Well, I have no idea who's coming to the festival. So we met with them. They had a little substation on Maroa right across from Legends. Legends was not there at that time. And so we brought a large group. We brought the media with us, and we brought about 50 supporters, including sitting city council people and the Human Relations Commission. And we got there, and when it was time to go in, we went upstairs. It was on the second floor, and they opened the door, and they ushered me in, and only one other person from my group got to come in. It was because he grabbed a hold of my shirt and was like right on my back as we walked in. But they literally pushed a city councilwoman out of the office.
Wow.
So there was a huge thing about that. So we really had to take them to task, and we ended up getting our permits. We ended up getting it worked out, but it was ugly. That lieutenant who was in charge of all that mess, his wife was the aide to one of the most conservative city council persons on the council at that time. So it was obviously political. It was all ugly. We had to assert ourselves. Not that long ago, we had to assert ourselves again by bringing the ACLU into this. They were again messing with us over the city permit. And so the ACLU called them on the Thursday before the event, so 2 days, and said, if they do not have their permit in hand by the end of the day, you will be in court with us. And so the city council people contacted me and said, oh, Jeffrey, how's it going? I said, well, not too good. I still don't have my permit. Well, now, Jeff, you know we're going to get it. We got an ugly gram from Michael Rishner, who was our ACLU lawyer. And I said, well, what did he tell you? Well, he told us we're going to be in court if we don't get this to you. Now, I said, I'm 2 days out, and you guys have not indicated in any way that you guys are going to work with us on this. So we ended up getting it, and because of our advocacy and not just being allowed to be steamrolled, we actually were able to create some positive change in Fresno City. They now have a parade ordinance, and we have been grandfathered in with like the Veterans Parade, which is coming up on Monday, the Mardi Gras Parade, Chinese New Year, the Children's Parade. Those of us have been grandfathered in and been given some guarantees and some amenities that are going to happen. So they used to do all this stuff for one parade, but not all the others. So it was definitely a thing. So every year they came for Fresno Rainbow Pride and hit us with new regulations, new rules, new expectations, and didn't do it for anyone else. So when we jumped from $300 for our barricades to $5,000, no other parade group had to do that. And they didn't do it to the Mardi Gras Parade, which happens first, and then the Chinese New Year's, they didn't do that. Then they hit us with it, but then they take it off by the time it was Veterans Day and the Children's Day Parade. So we really have been arguing like there's selective enforcement of codes and stuff, and I've had to have meeting after meeting after meeting, but it's been not allowing people to wear us down and to be really secure in what we're doing, and not being afraid if we need to take it to the next level. So for us at Fresno Rainbow Pride, and for me personally, I always try to go in nice and the path of least resistance. I'm working with you. I'm doing what you want. I know you by name. I've built a relationship. But once it gets to where it seems like we are being screwed over, then the Jeff who wants to bring out the pitchforks and have a protest laid down in the middle of the street and have a die-in comes out and really takes them on. So whether that's going to the media or is it going to ACLU or protesting in the meetings and stuff, that's where we're at. But there's always been the nice, polite, gentle way before we get to, okay, now you're going to make me be kind of ugly, but you're not going to railroad us. And I told him a couple years in a row, I said, hey, if you don't issue this permit, there is no reason for me to be down in that area. And we're talking about a couple days. We've got people coming from all over California that is coming to this event. We have a community. There's no way for me to call and say, hey, by the way, no, it's not happening now. I said, what are you going to do with 5,000 queers that show up on Olive on this Saturday? Because I'm not going to be there to help you. There's no reason for me to be there. You didn't give me the permit, and here we are. I said, so y'all need to figure out how this is. I said, because guess what? You're going to have 5,000 angry people down there with floats and all kinds of stuff. So there's going to be the biggest, most flamboyant political march that you have ever seen. And it's all going to be outside of your control. And it's not going to be on me because you've said no. And I said, okay, I won't be there. So.
What year was that they jumped the price of the barricades?
Oh, it's been about 5 years now. So last year, 2019, about March or April, because you can only start working on your permit about 45 days in advance. So that's not a lot of time. You have 45 days. They don't want your permit until it's 45 days. That's the soonest you can turn it in before the day of the event. So the day that we do that, it's 45 days in advance, which is ridiculous. I should be able to turn on our permit the day after Pride and say, we know we're doing this next year. We know this is the date. We sat down and I met with, which was the very first. I sat down in a large conference room at City Hall, and every department, sanitation, the garbage collectors, maintenance, fire department, risk management, traffic control, the bus department, all of them were at the table. And I found out that they had worked up a new ordinance that grandfathered us in. I never knew any of this because it was never really public knowledge. And I'm like, well, I haven't heard about any of this. So they started giving me all this stuff and like, oh, well, that's really cool. So it cut down some of the police fees we were paying. We were paying about $1,500, $1,600 to pay for the police presence at the parade, which was a must. You had to have it.
It's a requirement?
It was a requirement.
Okay.
And so they've done all these little things. They tweak this and tweak that. And so it used to be, in the very beginning, we used to do what was called a soft closure of Olive, which means we had an agreement with law enforcement that we would provide X amount of volunteers to act as safety street monitors, and we would maintain all of the small little residential streets down Olive. The police department would come in, block off Palm and Olive and Broadway and Olive and Wishon and Olive up to Van Ness and Olive. They would come in with police cars and their explorers and their scout group and their volunteers and all that, and they would take care of that, and it was a partnership that we would work together. So then they changed it and said that they would no longer do soft closures, because what that meant was, as the parade left over, there was no really human amounts of barricades. They would roll with us, and then the streets would be open at the end of the Pride Parade and open up traffic and stuff. They then decided that no, now it's going to be a hard closure. With the hard closure came the increase in barricades went from $300 up to $5,000. With you had to have a traffic flow plan done by the company that you were working with. You had to have the insurance on there, and they came in and they actually closed the street for the whole damn day, which impacted all the businesses and stuff. It was very anti-business. It was very much, it was a hindrance and an imposition on all of the residents and all of the business people down Olive and those side streets. So last year, they all of a sudden said, no, here's what it is, and we're going to grandfather you in, along with the Mardi Gras Parade and Chinese New Year's and Veterans and the Children's Day Parade, and then a couple other community type events like the Martin Luther King thing. They did some cultural events that they were all grandfathered in that came with some city assistance to a degree or two. That's when we found out about all that, but there's always been something. One year they changed rules and said, now you need to have non-owned auto insurance coverage. Well, what is that? Well, that means that you provide insurance on everybody that's not a vehicle of your guys. So in other words, if Fresno Rainbow Pride didn't own the vehicle or have rented the vehicle, we had to pay insurance for all these other vehicles.
Wow.
And we could, lo and behold, could not find that insurance. And so we had a insurance broker that did all of our work. She could not find what we were looking for. So when I called the city and said, this is one of the many little hurdles that they throw out at us, they sent us to New Orleans to Mardi Gras in May.
Oh,
Because
wow.
this stuff is coming May. Our event's in June, the first weekend in June. So I'm trying to get Mardi Gras. There's nobody in the summer in New Orleans working on Mardi Gras. There was nowhere to get a hold of anybody, so we had to beg and plead and petition not to do that year. Please to give us a waiver on that. This is really ridiculous. We don't find out until the week of whether or not they're going to do that or not. The next year, we found the non-owned auto, but then caused us to have other issues. So we were trying to split the parade and festival into two different events because when we found the non-owned auto, then it caused another problem with liability insurance for the festival. And then they became like we couldn't get one if we got the other. We just price inhibitive and stuff. So it's taken us a while to jump through all these hoops. But like I've always told them, if you give me enough time, we will problem solve anything you give us. Anything that the city has enacted and feels that this is in the best management of the city or for risk manager or whatever it is. When you give me enough time, I can do this. But when we're not allowed to turn our permit in for 45 days in advance, I can't change the fact that the majority of our community has already bought their participation in booths and marching units back in January. Now you want me to turn around and tell them, oh, you're going to have to owe another $50, another $100 to your part. We can't do that. But if you let us know in advance, we can fix all that. When you want us to do something, or you're saying, oh, well, now it's going to be $5,000 for barricades, which we hadn't planned, we had to go and start begging and pleading for money from different members of our community to cover that $5,000 that was not an expense expected. Here it is the week before the event, and now we're being hit with this.
Yeah.
So we keep telling them, if you give us the appropriate time, if the city of Fresno did business in an appropriate way with appropriate time frames, we will meet those things because we want to be good members of this community and we want to have this event. After 30 years, we should be able to put on this event without a hiccup. We should be able to turn our paperwork and know exactly what we're doing. You had asked about the police department. There have been many different parts of the police department who have controlled and still do have some sort of control over our permitting process or the day of the event. One year it was the traffic control part of the police department. And so when we first met with them, we went out and met with the traffic control division and met with them, and we were explaining what we did, and which was absolutely the coolest compliment we'd ever gotten. The police captain said, wow, you guys are all color coordinated. So your parade people wear this color, your festival people wear this color, you're the only one that wears that color, your PR people wear this color, your volunteers are in this color. He goes, wow. He goes, were you in the military? And I said, no, why? No. And he says, well, because that's very much a Navy thing. I said, no, we just know it works. And he goes, well, you know what? You need to go out and teach all the other groups that are having parades how to do that.
Wow.
And at Fresno State was going to have a centennial celebration where they were thinking about having a parade, and they were working with the same captain from the same traffic division, and he said, you need to go speak to the guy with gay pride because he'll be able to tell you how to do it. So
Nice.
Our relationship with the police has changed a great deal. Last year when we met with everybody in March around the table of all these city departments, the police guy, when he walked in, said, oh my God, Jeff, you're still doing this? I said, yeah, da-da-da-da. We knew each other from working on it for years. And he says, oh, you know what? This guy's the best. Anything that this guy knows how to do this. So he's telling all these city departments that we know our stuff and that they wish that we could go and teach some of these other groups that are out there doing community events and stuff, not just the pride parades, how to do it. So that was like, oh my God, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And so unexpected when I was sitting at a table with probably 15 department heads that I've always considered these department heads to be like little king and queendoms, the little fiefdoms, and they have rules over us to control us. And not everybody is enlightened, not cultured or sensitive or tolerant.
Yeah, I feel like every year I hear about a new barrier that the city has thrown at you to make it more difficult to even have the parade, and yeah.
And it should, you would think after 30 years it should be like clockwork.
Yeah.
I call them wrinkles. What's the newest wrinkle they're throwing at us this time? So it's just a wrinkle. We're going to steamroll it out. We're going to get it fixed and taken care of. Because we're not going to not allow our community to have this event. We are going to figure out one way. And I always go back to my activism. Deny us, and we're going to have the most flamboyant march you've ever seen.
Yeah.
There's going to be flags and rainbows and balloons and a lot of costumes.
Yeah. What do you feel like you get out of Pride?
Well, I want to circle back and say, I feel like Pride really is that time of the year that an individual can go and get their batteries recharged. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing for me, is that realizing that a young person who has never attended a Pride parade and has always felt kind of isolated, alone, or unique and the only one, and to be able for them to say, oh my God, look at all these people, and to look at the diversity of our community. And it seems like our community comes together and they have a good time. And it really does help us deal with the jackass neighbor that posts, yes, that gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married, or the minister that's harping on us on TV, or a politician such as the president of the Fresno Unified School Board that was putting all that hatred out last year. All those type of things that just really wear down our individual psyche. When we hear these daily negative things, even when we don't believe those things, it wears us down to think, oh my God, I thought we'd come along. There's still this amount of people that hate me and would rather see me be dead than be alive. I think that pride parades and film festivals and any type of street fair celebration that is honoring the LGBTQ experience is a way in which we can go and have our soul or our psychic emotional energy recharged. And that's what I get out of it. I get out of seeing our community come together, and I get stoked when someone new comes to the Parade and Festival, when a new vendor shows up, or a new group comes, or someone puts energy into their festival or into the parade floats and marching units and those type of things. I get jazzed out of that. I also like the fact that we're one of the few festivals in California that is all ages. We honor everybody from little teeny kids all the way up to our seniors. So we have a designated children's area with bounce houses and activities that are ran by, right now, Our Savior Lutheran Church is doing it, but Wesley Methodist Church used to do it for us, doing carnival games and stuff where the kids have things that are really geared to them. And then we have people in our community that donate for us to put together kitty goodie bags, which is, we noticed there were a lot of kids just showing up at the festival the first 2 years we had control of it. It's like, where is your parent? Oh, they just walked over from the community, from the neighborhood. So we wanted to make sure that there was a bottle of water and some type of nutritious snack, something without peanuts, some type of little toy or treat, and we gave out 75 bags to the kids that come. And so that's really important. We're now looking at what kind of things can we do so that our seniors that have the same type of issues that maybe our youth do, lack of income, lack of mobility to be able to get somewhere, not being comfortable, not feeling supported, not feeling encouraged to be involved. How are we going to increase the accessibility for our seniors to make a day out in the heat comfortable and acceptable for them? So we've got a whole group that are working on outreach to our elderly part of our community to do that. But that our whole community comes together and has a good time.
Yeah.
That's what recharges me.
Yeah. Yeah, the heat is a big thing. I remember when they made that rule that you can't have the big canopies, so now you have like all those umbrellas and
yeah. Well, and that's that's a rule that we weren't able to get around. But like I said, that's another wrinkle. That wrinkle came about literally Friday night before the Saturday event. Where if we put the canopy up, they decided that we weren't meeting certain variances because of a brick wall. They weren't going to let us have the festival. Then we're just take it down, don't put it up. We still had to pay for it, $3,000 that we had rented it, but we couldn't use it. But then we learned, okay, we're not going to be able to do this, and it is a state law that Fresno City can't override. It's a fire code state law that can't be overridden by the city, and it has to do with the fact that we are puzzling these parcels together, and there is a cinder block wall. And because of that cinder block wall, it kept us from having the tents and stuff because it doesn't have the variances in footage we need between where the canopies start and the wall begins, and from where the canopy begins and the building begins.
Oh, wow.
And so like drain pipes, awnings, gutters, you have to measure from that point out. And then there's so many different things. And each one of our pieces of property that we have access to prevents us from having anything larger than what we're bringing out. So we've had to get really creative. We now bring out these massive evaporative cooling systems, and we now have purchased 100 more umbrellas to put out so people can have shade. That's one of the things when we took this thing over back in 2003, one of the things we said is we need to provide an area that's comfortable for our community so they hang out with us for the whole day. And that had never happened before. So we bought portable round picnic tables for umbrellas so that people could kick back and have conversations and chit-chat and relax and spend the 4 hours out there with us instead of come, walk through, and leave.
Yeah.
So that's been a big part of making it comfortable. So now with the canopies and the smaller canopies and the umbrellas and the evaporative cooling things, we've done as much as we can to make it an enjoyable, pleasant, comfortable day in 100, possibly 110 degree heat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It seems like a lot of people really work together to make it happen.
We have a committee of about 20 to 40 people, and each committee kind of works independently. So Jay Sanchez is not my linguistics, please forgive me, Fred Bringelman, my logistics person who organizes our contracts for our fencing, our porta potties, our security, our evaporative cooling, our generators, our cabling, and all of that type of stuff that we have to have brought in and delivered and set up. He handles all of that. We have people that do nothing but come out and chalk where each individual booth's going to be, and that has to be very precise because of fire codes. You have to have so many space between each booth. Can't have so many booths put together to equal a certain amount of footage. There has to be 20 feet to drive a fire truck down the road. So we've had to make accommodations. We have a group of people that come out and chalk the thing out the day before so everybody knows where their booth's going to be. They come and they are there first thing in the morning, like at 7 o'clock, getting people set up. No, your booth is number 41. It's around the corner. Here's your map, blah, 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 blah. Here's where your tables are. There's a whole group of that. There's people that are organizing the volunteers, folks that are organizing all of the concessions, someone that's organizing all of the food vendors, someone that is down at the parade area organizing all of the entries, getting them set up, getting them to stay out of people's property, not to block people's access to their private property. Please be in this area. Please keep the noise down. Please move aside so the people that's going next can go there. They help keep the flow going. There's a group of us that are working on the grandstands, announcing the stuff, working with all of the media. CMAC is now filming, so we have people that are working with that. We have 3 MCs. We have folks that have got to set up the sound equipment, the stuff over at the festival. We've got an entertainment committee. We've got a beer group that's running the beer stuff. We have so many people.
That's a lot.
We have people that work with nothing but the politicians. people that work nothing but with outreach to other organizations, people that are working with the press releases and the media. So there's people that are handling all kinds of different things all day long. We have people that are working the information booth, people that are working the first aid booth. And then we have a tremendous amount of folks that come to help us set up, and our street safety monitors. These are just day of the event folks. And we have people that have to be there to break it down. So this is the hardest thing for all of us. And for a couple of years, we had to figure something out, because at the end of the day, the committee disappeared. And it was literally my husband, Juan Bustamante, and myself trying to load two 26-foot trucks up with 100 canopies, 200 umbrellas, tables, chairs, all of everything, cleaning up the whole street area. It's 110, we're dying. And there came along a homeless man that said, hey, can I get the cans? Not only can you have the cans, I'll pay you. And I'll give you food and a t-shirt and whatever you want if you will help us. Because it's just me and him doing all this at the end of the day, and we've got to get that street reopened by 6. And so now we've really worked hard on securing a designated cleanup group. We have one guy that does nothing but clean Olive all day long. He goes and he sweeps the gutters, and he's cleaning the sidewalks, and he's emptying all of the city garbage cans that are out in front of businesses to keep those from overflowing.
Nice.
So we've got people from one end to the next, and so we start planning before the parade ever starts and stops for next year. We work all the way through the day after Pride. Everything's got to be packed up, and then those trucks go into someone's private yard, because they've got to be unloaded the next day. We can't unload them. The storage units close at 7, and we're still out there cleaning up until 6. We'll never get everything unloaded. So then the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 or 8 o'clock, we're there unloading these 2 huge trucks.
Wow.
And so then it's a thank you thing for the volunteers, a thank you thing for the committee, a thank you thing for all of the sponsors and donors, planning for the new event, the wrap-up meeting. It just seems to never stop anymore.
Yeah.
It's just very ongoing. We've actually outgrown many of our things to where we have to break things up.
Yeah. Do you feel like the demographics of who comes to Pride has changed over the years?
Yeah, unfortunately I do, and this is one of the things I've been kind of battling on. The good part of the demographic change is that more non-LGBT members are coming. So more of the Central Valley population is coming that's not LGBTQ related, are coming and enjoying this as a cultural event. That's a very good positive in a demographic change. The other part of the change is that many of the folks of means, are LGBT folks that have means, meaning that they may have more financial ability to do stuff, are not coming. And so there are many little other things that are happening that they choose to go to. So one of them is there is an event that happens, and it's in the same area that we're in, and they open their doors at the same time the parade starts. And so people just naturally congregate in there. We never see them. They're not supporting us. And the rest of the community is not seeing. So when I go places, say, we need all of you to come. Yes, maybe this is the 30th parade and you've seen 29 of them. You don't feel you need to come for the 30th. But it may not just be about you. It's about everybody that's coming for the very first time. They need to see the beautiful diversity this community holds and see all of the community come and support stuff.
Yeah.
So I try to work with these other groups and stuff that are kind of riding on the coattails of Pride to say, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you tell them, hey, go to the festival, get your hand stamped, go look at the festival stuff, and then come over and have a cocktail on us, or half price admission, or once you've done that, instead of just saying, okay, well, we've got air conditioning, why go look at the parade? You want to be with a bunch of gay people celebrating, but you don't want to be with the people. Mm-hmm. So that type of demographic thing has really, I think, is a negative impact. Mm-hmm. That some people are jaded or don't feel they need to go, or it's below them, or that Pride is now That's for the lower classes to go to.
What
Really
the hell?
irritates the hell out of me. I just freaks my hippie activist butt out.
What is this other event that they're going to?
I don't want to name it by name.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
There are several that are happening, but one of them, and it's just like, oh my gosh, really? And it's like, can't you start it like the parade ends? Can't you at least start it when the parade ends, regardless of whether the festival's open or not? And start your event once we're done with the parade. Don't start at the same time as the parade. And then they advertise as, oh, you can come be cool and comfortable with us, or you can go over there.
Oh,
and it's like, well, first of all, yeah. Why is Pride in June? Why are any of the Pride? Why is June known as Gay Pride Month? Because those queens and those dykes and those young people in the city, in the middle of a hot, sweltering summer, were frustrated and irritable and fought back after this has been going on. Had this happened like in pleasant fall or spring, would we have had riots? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why is it that correctional facilities, like juvenile halls that I've worked at, they keep their buildings extremely cool? Why do you think they do that? Because it keeps tempers down and it keeps irritability from flowing. If you're hot, sweaty, and bothered, and that's what I said, our community was hot, sweaty, and bothered, and we fought back. That's why it's so important. Fresno Rainbow Pride, in the very beginning days, in that very first year, we fought with all the other groups in California to have the very first Sunday. It used to be on Sundays. Pride traditionally across the nations are on Sundays. We fought to have ours that first weekend because we wanted to be the first in California in Pride Month. Because you have San Francisco and LA and San Diego and Long Beach and all these others. We wanted to kick it off. And it became very important for us. And yes, it is hot. And yes, it is uncomfortable many times. But you know what? People take their shirts off and run around without their shirts. And you see a lot of skin. And that's why we are honoring and celebrating these folks that fought back in a hot, sweltering summer. It makes sense for us.
Yeah.
So when you wanted to move your thing to October, that doesn't make sense to us. October is LGBTQ History Month. June is Pride Month. And we are one of 4 or 5 major prides in the state of California that are in June. Many others, like Palm Springs, just happened a couple weeks ago, or last weekend. Different ones happened at different times, but we felt it was important to be in the month of June and to fight for that. So we're okay with it being hot. We've had a couple years, in 30 years, it's rained twice.
Yeah.
The first one was horrible. It was cold and nasty and miserable. And it destroyed Pride. And it wasn't under our watch. It was under the Stonewall Pride's watch. The next time it rained was under our watch, but it was a drizzle. And it just drizzled the whole damn day.
I remember that. That was a really nice day.
It was. And we had straight people that were involved with us and putting stuff on and said, oh my God, this would not happen in any other community. Nobody left. They just kept coming. And I said, at the end of the day, we were literally kind of swishing people out the gate to get them to leave. Because it wasn't a rain, it was just a wet drizzle. But it was very hard on all of us because all of the canopies and everything we had could not be stored. So Mother Nature smiled on us. We got everything loaded up as best we could. We got out to the storage units. It had been rainy and misty for 2 or 3 days. Sun came out. For the 3 hours we were unloading, we were able to open all of the canopies. All of the umbrellas had to dry out. Everything had to be hand-dried, all the chairs and tables, or they would go to mold in units. And as soon as we closed those doors, it started to rain.
Wow.
So Mother Nature smiled on us.
That's
But it was a huge thing, but it is going to be hot and miserable. And I'm 319 pounds, 350 pounds at any given time. I am extremely miserable out there. I am a white boy that gets sunburned very easily, and I am dying. If I can do it, all of us can do it and be supportive of that event. And we should remember, we're honoring all of our brothers and sisters who fought for all the things we have now back in 1969 when it was so horribly humid in New York.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like it is a lot. You do see a lot of the same organizations there and a lot of the same people, but I love that because to me it feels like a big
queer family gathering, because you're like, oh man, I haven't seen you in
Mm-hmm.
a year, and you look at you, you're doing great, um, but it is also growing each year. Like I can tell it's getting a lot bigger each year too.
So the
But
queer community is continuing to support. The straight community is coming to sample our culture, get a taste of the rainbow, and that's fabulous. And more other mainstream businesses, organizations, and service providers are beginning to come because they realize that their customers are LGBTQ, that they provide services to the LGBT community. So we're seeing a lot more mainstream groups come in as well. So it's getting big in that way. One of the things I like to say when you say it's like a big family thing, it's like a yearly family reunion.
yeah,
Gina Adams with the Fresno County Health Department, they usually bring in their testing mobile, and they do the rapid HIV testing and syphilis. And I will have her on the radio show for stuff, and she'll say, people will come and say, yeah, it's my annual, I come and get tested every year at the Pride Parade. It's what I do. And, I've got people that come to adopt animals every year at the Pride Parade because we have SPCA out there. Mm-hmm. So it's beginning to have traditions unto of itself.
yeah.
And it is like a big family reunion. There are people that I won't see for a whole year I'll see out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like demographics of who helps plan Pride has changed over the years?
We've had a big change. There's a lot of, and I would like to say they're young people, but they were young when they got involved, and now they've stayed with us, so they're no longer considered youth. Mm-hmm. But we have folks that are in their 70s that are actively involved in organizing and working on the day of the event. We have at least 3 or 4 people that are 70 years old plus that are coming out. We have young individuals that are helping out and getting involved. Just the other day, a 19-year-old individual came and jumped in and got involved. It's going to help us work with some marching band component stuff. I believe that we are one of the organizations that have allies that are actually on our committees that actually work and participate in putting this on. We have a good, strong contingent of trans individuals or gender nonconforming individuals. We have a good proportion of women involved and a good proportion of men, and we really have a broad spectrum of what's out there in the world. So white, black, brown, Asian, you name it, they're all a part of this ongoing planning committee. So I feel that it's very diverse. We have a minister. The minister of Our Saving Luther Church is involved with us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so we have people from the youth group, people from the seniors group, people from other organizations, people that are involved in nothing else, people that are involved in just day of things, but really represent in many ways the spectrum of our rainbow.
That's awesome. Well, I think that was all of the questions that I had, but I was wondering if there was anything else that you wanted to talk about or anything you feel like we didn't touch on or that you wanted to share?
I believe in this community. And I believe, not just with Pride, but with all the things I'm involved in or have been involved in. I believe that when I was 16 years old, this community saved me. And it is extremely unsettling for me to think of not being involved with this community or not being a part of doing stuff with this community. It is such an ingrained part of my life. Community is my family. I can't imagine anything. And I know as we grow as a society and as we become a little bit more and more mainstreamed and more accepted, the need for our community to have queer safe places kind of goes. So I know there's been a few gay bars that have closed down because, and I know that this was the comments that's been said, you know what, we don't need to go to a gay bar. We can hold hands and dance at any bar here in Fresno anymore. I don't necessarily know that that's 100% true.
Yeah.
But I will say, yeah, that's part of it. But we always are going to need a place where we don't have to explain who we are. And so the difference is we may have to explain our behavior or our feelings or our expressions of love in a different setting. If we're in a straight area, we don't need to do that. And when we come into a gay positive, gay safe space, we all kind of know what it feels like to be discriminated against and not accepted for who we really are. And I think not to have to explain that or justify our being is such a powerful place to be at. Why were the bars our first places to go? Because they're the only place we had to go. But they acted as community centers and gathering places and places of communion where people could meet other people like them. Not to hook up for a love affair or a long-time relationship, but actually be with people like them. And so Pride is very much like that. And I'm glad to see our movement. I believe that within my lifetime, that being gay and lesbian, bi, transgendered will just be, oh, okay, no big deal. But I always want to make sure that there is still a space for us to be this way together. And so, we're seeing a lot of closures of our independent bookstores. So lesbian bars have basically closed down everywhere. LGBT bookstores all across the nation is closing down. The newspapers are going out. Part of that is just because of the times we're in, and newspapers across the world are going out, magazines are going out. We are an evolving we're seeing societal change evolve in ways that makes me sad sometimes of the loss of the queer identity and culture. And that part makes me sad and melancholy, whereas the hope for people won't be bullied in schools and there won't be like, you're marrying a man, or, what's this about, and being denied promotions and stuff will all just eventually fall by the wayside. I do believe that Trump is a blip, but it's a blip to me very much like Nazi Germany was a blip, and it could have some huge, ugly consequences. We all need to get out and vote, and we all need to make sure that we want to vote and be the change that we want to see. We need to enact the change ourselves. So we need to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So we need to change where we're at. We need to re-strengthen him. We've lost quite a bit with him being president and with societal stuff. People now feel they have a right to speak ugly speech. They have a right, and it's okay to be discriminatory, and it's okay to slap, punch, kick, burn, kill, murder someone because we don't like them or with who they are authentically. And I think that we've got a lot of work to overcome that. And so I really do hope that we all come together and put our differences aside over who is progressive and who is not. And we need to vote these people out of office, and we need to start making the changes. And we're going to have to really work on the fact that this man has affected the court system in such a conservative, negative, reactionary way. We are going to have to battle that for decades now to correct this mess that he has created. So that I have amazing hope for our community. So I'll just end on that. I have amazing hope that we shall overcome. We're going to reach where we need to be, and we're all going to do this together.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn the recorder off.
Okay.
Are you sure you're all...
I've said probably oh my God, I talked all day long. 2 hours. That's all, I always laugh when they say, I don't know, I have a...